So, before we start the session, I thought I would tell a small story about how I landed up in this seat. So, my daughter studies in Ashoka University in North in Sonepat, and she had come home to Kochi for the Christmas vacation. And then one day, when she had gone to the Lulu Mall, she bought a book, and that book was this H Pop. So that was the book she bought. So she was reading it, and after she completed the book, she told me that, Baba, this is a very chilling book. Do you want to read it? So I am also a book reviewer, so I said that no, I'll probably read it later. So she went and put it in the bookshelf. Then after 2 days, what happened was I had to go in search of another book, and I saw this K-pop lying on the bookshelf. So I just took it, and I began reading it, and it's a tremendous book. And this is called serendipity, because after 3 or 4 days after I completed the book, Sabin Iqbal, the curator of the Mathrubhumi festival, called and said, would you like to interview Kunal Purohit? So I knew the, the universe wants me to talk to you. So I'll start straight away with this questions. One of the things as a
Although I must say that I must give my publisher the feedback that it's not a hit on the first look, because you saw it, you said, oh, I'll read it later. So, yeah.
That's because I'm a reviewer. I had other books. So one of the things which came to my mind was, Kunal, you got a scoop. I mean, this is a subject nobody knew of. So in journalistic terms, you had got a scoop. So how did you stumble on this subject?
So what did happen was, for a number of years now, I have been, as a reporter, actively looking at hate crimes. So lynchings, riots, mob violence, but mostly religion tinged, and sort of religion driven hate crimes. And I used to always have a bit of an issue with journalists like me, because what we used to do is we used to treat them as events. So there's a mob, lynching that happens, and we descend on it, we cover it, we report it, and we think it's an event to be reported, and we sort of look at it for a couple of days, and then we move on. Right? Similarly with riots, similarly with so many of these sort of violence, which is related and linked to religion. And I think one question that I wasn't finding an answer to in that kind of reporting was just how the event was even happening, right? Why was the violence even taking place in the first place? And I think that's when I realized that there is a process that we are not looking at, the process that leads up to the event. As journalists, we're trained to look at it at the event and then after the event, but we're not looking at it at, just what is driving and what is causing that to become an event. And then in one of these trips that I used to undertake, where I used to typically go to the sites of these hate crimes, many weeks and many months after they've taken place, try to understand, from the victim's perspective to the accused, to the cops, the lawyers, all of them. And in the process of doing one such piece of reporting, I landed in Jharkhand, in a small town that very few people have heard of. It's called Gumla. And a hate crime had happened there. And when I went, I realized that the hate crime had happened on the day of the Ram Navami festival. And typically in Jharkhand, Ram Navami is, tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people hitting the streets, taking a procession through different parts of the town. Including the Hindu areas, the Muslim areas, and so on and so forth. Now in Gumla, this was a very syncretic affair, because the procession would come, it would snake its way around the town, and when it would come in front of the Jama Masjid, the mosque, the main mosque of Gumla, the local Muslims would come out. They would give refreshments to the processionists. They would sort of shower petals on them, and so on and so forth, and then the procession would go forward. Except that year in which the hate crime happened, there was something different about the procession. The procession came inside the lane, and where the Jama Masjid is, they stood right outside, and the music in that moment changed to a song which effectively said, Mulle ki topi gira do, right? Knock the skull cap off the cleric's head. And in that moment, there could have been a riot. There could have been, because suddenly the Muslims, didn't know how to react to this. And the crowd was, as I said, tens of thousands of people strong, with swords, with lathis, and it could have gone anywhere, frankly. In that moment, at least the police intervened and sort of shut the music down. But when some of these people who were in the procession, when they were going back home that night, on the way back home, about 2 kilometers away from this spot, they find a Muslim young man who's all of 20. He's talking to a Hindu girl from the village. And so they're so sort of the passion in which they've exited the procession. They see that sight, and in their mind, they say this is love jihad. So what they do is they drag the Muslim boy away, they tie him to an electric pole, and they beat him till he drops dead. And that is the hate crime that I had gone to cover originally. Except if I had only looked at that as an event, I would have not realized where the people who were accused of the hate crime were about 3 or 4 hours ago. And that is how my mind was blown as to just what are these kinds of songs which are talking of violence, which are talking of threatening fellow citizens, which are trying to dehumanize a community in the country. And that is really how I stumbled upon, as I call it, the world of Hindutva pop and the world of Hindutva pop stars.
Wow, amazing. Because we all are guilty as journalists because we just go and cover the event.
Including myself.
Earlier.
Yeah.
Right. So that's great. Okay, so in the beginning of the book, you have focused on a woman singer by the name of Kavi Singh. Can you tell us something about her?
Kavi Singh, so my book is divided into 3 sections. There are 3 different characters whose lives I follow for 4 years. And as I said, I started off, looking at music as Hindutva music, as one form of popular culture. But then I realized that the story doesn't really end there. Music is not the only form of popular culture that was weaponized by the Hindu right wing. And I slowly realized that there were other forms, like poetry and like book publishing, right? And these are all forms that we generally associate with a very benign sort of purpose. The purpose largely can be entertainment, it can sometimes be giving information, but nothing more. But here I found a world which was, weaponizing these forms of popular culture. Kavi Singh, the first character of the 3, is a 25, 26-year-old, singer from Haryana. Her father is a Haryanvi singer. And one fine day she's cooking and she's humming a song, and by then she's only a beauty treatment. She works at a cosmetic parlor and she's delivering beauty treatments. And she's singing and she's humming a song, and her father says, "Oh, you can sing, beta aap ga sakte ho." And so the next morning she's in a studio, and just days after that, there is the Pulwama terror attack that happens, right? For all of you who remember it, in 2019. Which is the worst sort of peacetime terror attack on India's paramilitary forces. A lot of us in that moment are angry, we're outraged, we're asking questions as to how did a government which prides itself in keeping us secure, how did this happen under their watch? But in that moment of anger and confusion, Kavi Singh stumbles upon a poem by a fellow poet, and she makes that into a song. The song is essentially, it's called Pulwama, and it's on YouTube, and you can go back and Google it. The song is essentially, saying that, the terror attack happened. Let's not ask questions of the government. Let's not blame Pakistan. Let's not blame the terrorist. Let's essentially blame the Muslims who are living amongst us, because they have been the ones who facilitated this. And overnight, the song becomes an absolute viral sensation. She becomes a celebrity overnight, and that is how a journey starts. So from Pulwama, she's now, she's about 5 years old, but she's got about 100 songs that have come out in the 5 years. She will have a song for every occasion in the right-wing ecosystem that you can think of. Right? You talk of Article 370, she has a song. You talk of this Hindu right-wing belief that Muslims are outnumbering them, she has a song on how there should be a law to control Muslim population. She will have a song on how Muslims are taking away Hindu women and Hindu girls, and the song is called Love Jihad. She has a song for that. She has a song for every occasion that there is, and for every conspiracy that there is also, to in some ways legitimize the conspiracy and keep peddling it forward.
So, who's writing the lyrics for all these songs?
So as I said, the first song was by another Haryanvi poet, but then she sort of started getting her father, who was also a singer, to write some of these words, and it's reached a point now where she writes most of her songs. Her latest song is how Modi should be re-elected and he should get 400 seats in the elections that are coming up. So now she's writing most of her songs herself.
Yeah, I also saw a video. So, can you tell something about her attire? I found that very interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, when she launched herself as a singer, her husband and her father were planning every nitty-gritty of what she should be like. So, they were planning what her attire should be like, what her personality should be like. And then what she's now achieved is that she basically wears, and I say that she tries to resemble Narendra Modi. She wears a kurta, she wears a pajama, she will wear a Nehru kurta, or a Modi kurta as we call it in New India. And she wears a pagdi sometimes. So this is her attire. She is possibly one of the few female singers in this masculine world of Hindutva and in the masculine world of Hindutva pop. But it's very interesting that she feels the need to dress up like a man, right? And she has to show masculine tendencies, where she says that when she becomes Kavi Singh and she becomes a character in her head, when she's wearing these clothes, she becomes a different person. So she says, I don't take no for an answer. I will not have anyone talking to me in an insulting tone, and so on and so forth. So there are a set of rules that she follows once she becomes Kavi Singh, and a lot of it has to do with the attire.
Yeah, I found it interesting that she was friends with Muslims earlier. And then what made this change come? Also, a drastic change.
So I think in our liberal world, we often you sort of harbor certain conceptualizations of what makes someone sort of lean towards the right wing and so on and so forth. One of the things that I did in my book, very with a very sort of determined focus, was to try and understand what I call, Shevlin, the point of radicalization, right? How did they become what they did, and how did they embrace the ideology that they did? In Kavi's case, for instance, when she was in school, she used to have these two Muslim friends, and she used to hang out with them all the time. They would go to each other's homes and so on and so forth. She says that one of the Muslim girls that she was friends with got married when, or at least her nikah was fixed, when she was in the 7th or the 8th standard. And that for her was a bit of a break, saying, oh, wait, what just happened? I mean, my family is not telling me to get married. Why are they telling her to get married? And then her family at this point was already telling her, Muslims are not good. They slaughter cows, and they eat beef and all of that. Interestingly, when all of this is happening, the movie Gadar comes out, right? And then in her mind, she's looking at her friends who always, and she says this, who always used to celebrate Pakistan's victory over India in a cricket match. So she said, why are you celebrating Pakistan's victory? We are Indians. And the Muslim girls used to apparently tell her that, that's because we belong to Pakistan. We're just temporarily here, but we all want to go to Pakistan. When she sees Gadar, she realizes that actually the whole community is like this, right? And the whole nation is like this. So it is Islam, and it is Muslims, and it is Pakistan as three categories which fit into the narrative that her family was anyway trying to feed her. And it's at that point that she embraces it and says, okay, this is what they are.
Yeah, would you believe that they said we belong to Pakistan?
I mean, I took it with a pinch of salt,
Yeah.
for sure. But I will tell you this. I have a cousin, an unconnected story, but I have a cousin, and he hails from Gujarat. And I remember going back to Gujarat in 2002, right? The violence happens in Feb, when I go back in April or so. And he's very much like me. He's my age, he's got a very good education. He's studying engineering. He's now in Canada, by the way. And I go back and I say, it was so terrible what happened in Gujarat. What happened? Why was the madness unleashed? And he says the same thing. He says, oh, you don't know them, Kunal. You don't know these Muslims. I said, what do you mean? He says, oh no, whenever Pakistan would win, we would hear crackers going off in Muslim localities. Right? So there are, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying that these are isolated instances that are taken together, and then there is a narrative that is then stitched together saying this is how they are. Right?
Okay, I'm keen to know how many H-pop singers are there and where are they mostly based?
It's difficult to get an estimate of this, Shevlin, because I think what's happening is now with the internet, it's become so easy to actually become a singer, a star, but also a Hindutva pop singer. Now, for instance, with Kavi, I have gone to studios where she's recording songs, and you will not believe this, but she finishes writing a song in about half an hour to an hour. I went to the studio and I saw that she finished recording the song out of scratch. She didn't have a tune. We walked into the studio in an hour. She had the tune ready. The song was recorded in a couple of hours, and the song was out that night. Right. So the way in which the industry also works means that it's very easy now to do this. So it's very difficult to get a grip on actual numbers. There's no data anywhere about how many of these people exist. In fact, most of us don't even know that this world even exists of singers who are focusing on Hindutva as a genre of music.
No, so mostly is it based in UP, Haryana, MP?
I mean, sitting in Kerala, it's convenient and easy to and comfortable sometimes to think that this is all happening in the north. I have some disturbing news on that front. One of the most popular hubs of some of this music is as deep south as Karnataka, right? I was in Hyderabad a couple of weeks ago, and I met people who said, "Oh, we've heard similar songs in Telugu." I don't know about Kerala yet, but maybe at the end of the trip I'll discover something about music in Malayalam and Hindutva pop. But my point here is this, that there is now a template that is set, right? These people across the country are seeing that there is a genre of music that is created that is actually getting a lot of clout in the Hindu right wing. The BJP actively sometimes promotes it. They are seen in BJP rallies. They're seen with some of the top leaders of the BJP. They get access to the Hindu right-wing ecosystem. So if I'm a pop singer with a failed career, I'd say that's a great model for me to follow. If I can just create songs which other different communities, they will be picked up, and then there will be direct or indirect state patronage that I get. So my fear is that it is going to only grow more and more.
So interesting thing about is that many of the lyrics, there's a lot of Islamophobia. What is the reaction of Muslims to this?
It's dehumanizing. The rhetoric spans from subtle dog whistling. So there is a very famous song that I don't know if people here have heard. It's called Bharat Ka Bachcha Bachcha Jai Shri Ram Bolega. Right? Every kid in the country will say Jai Shri Ram. And then so on the face of it, you say, what is wrong with this? But the point is, I think there is an attempt to try and assert Hindu supremacy over every other religion, right? The point is to say that every kid in the country will say Jai Shri Ram, will not say anything else. It can be so many different religions, but they will not say any of that. So the idea is, there can be subtle dog whistling, but there can also be something very, very hard line, which is there is a song which says, "Agar छुआ मंदिर तो तुझे दिखा देंगे, तुझको तेरी औकात बता देंगे," which is that if you dare to touch the temple, I will show you your place, right? And then it goes on to speak of very, very violent threats to people who are eyeing the Hindu temple. Now the question is, who is it targeted towards? And it's very clear that it's targeted towards Muslims. So what happens typically is that most of these songs get played in processions, like the Ramnami procession that I told you guys about. They are processions that are carried out in different parts of the country with mobs of thousands and tens of thousands of people, and the songs are meant to elicit a reaction, right? The song is nothing if it doesn't get a reaction. So typically what happens is they would go to Muslim localities and these songs would be played, or they would go outside a mosque and then they would play these songs. And this, if you look for videos on YouTube, you'll find this happening everywhere across the country. This happens in the north, this happens in the south, this is happening in my home state of Maharashtra. So this is happening everywhere because, again, as I said, it becomes a very convenient template. You don't have to do anything. You just have to take a procession out, stop in front of a mosque and play a song. What is the police going to accuse you of? What are the Muslims going to come out and say? That they're playing a song. That's it. So it's replaced the act of delivering a hate speech. You don't need someone to go there and actually tell you, slaughter them, or, they're terrible, or we should do this or that. The songs are now doing that for you.
Wow. No, but you think the Muslims in these localities, they are terrified about,
So, I mean, in my experience, Shevlin, and I've covered hate crimes extensively, and I've always wondered at this question of, how are the Muslims reacting to sometimes, say, mob violence, riots and stuff. I think in most cases, the Muslim community in India has realized that there is no point in responding to this. Now, you can call it, reaction coming from despair or hopelessness, or you can call it a response coming from a sense of practicality, saying, this is not the time, or even maturity. You can describe it the way you like. But I see that in most cases, the Muslim community doesn't respond. But the point is, they're always only waiting for that one opportunity when they do respond.
the spark.
That one time, of the 20 times, there'll be that one occasion when there will be a response. Like it happened in Mira Road in Mumbai. I don't know if any of you sort of followed the news, but this was on the day of the Ram Mandir consecration, where very similarly, there's a group of Hindu right-wing activists who go to different areas, go to areas where there are Muslims in a large number, and then they shout slogans. Then they have these sort of very, very provoking things that they say from bikes and stuff. And when they see that there is a reaction, that reaction gets captured on mobile phones. So for the next few days, all you're seeing is the reaction. You're not seeing the action, right? You're not seeing the process by which this has happened.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, that's very interesting. So this fan following for these songs, is it confined to North India, or do they have listeners among the NRI crowd in UK, Europe, USA and Australia?
I mean, one of the characters in my book, he's the book publisher that I told you about, who runs a publishing house which is exclusively focused on putting out books about Hindutva, and which sort of pushes the Hindutva line. I had no idea about his existence at all. I'd never heard of him. I didn't know who he was. My relatives in the UK rang me up one day in 2019 or 2020, and they say, there's this terrific guy. He's doing God's work. He's fearless. He's anti-establishment. We like to send him money. Can you see what he's like? And I said, sure. I mean, he sounds like a great guy. Let me check him out. And then when I check him out, it's this guy who's then become the character of my book. His purpose in life is that he believes he's fighting a cultural war for the Hindus, right? He's at the forefront of a cultural war that the Hindus are facing from not just Islam, but from Christianity, from the West, from Netflix, from Amazon. All of these are conspiring to target Hindus, and that is the message that he keeps giving out in his work. And this is the guy that they wanted to, sort of fund and support. So my point in saying this is the internet is really, broken barriers of regions, of nations, and most of this stuff is now global. There are videos that come out from time to time about how some of these Hindutva pop songs are played, and there was one video recently, just in the run-up to the Ram Mandir consecration, where there was a rally, there's a car rally by Hindus in New Jersey, which was, sort of wanting to showcase the joy and the exuberance of the occasion. And that car rally played some of these songs. So we're seeing that these songs are everywhere. They're not restricted to regions or even countries.
It's quite heavy, man.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so you've also mentioned the power of poetry in extremist indoctrination. Can you tell us something about these Kavi Sammelans which take place in North India?
So I think popularly we've imagined that there was this form of entertainment in especially rural and semi-rural India, mostly the northern parts and the western parts of India, which was the Kavi Sammelan, which is really poets coming together and reciting poetry over various subjects. We assumed, and so did I, that that form had sort of died down. Except what I did find in my 4 years of reporting this book was that actually that form is very much alive, and there are people who've entered that world who will recite only and only poetry that toes the Hindutva line, right? So Kamal Agne, who is the second character of my book, he is one of those poets, and his magnum opus, the first ever poem that went viral, that made him big, was this 14-minute magnum opus on Gandhi. It was on Gandhi's legacy, and it was on Gandhi's assassination. And there is a line which is the line that he ends the poem with, which says, "अगर गोडसे की गोली उतरी ना होती सीने में, हर हिंदू पढ़ता नमाज फिर मक्का और मदीने में," right? If Godse had not shot Gandhi dead in that moment, all of the Hindus here would have been reciting namaz in Makkah and Medina. So that is the kind of work that he does. So he will recast historical events in a very different light, in a way that suits the Hindutva agenda. He will look at historical figures like Gandhi. He will look at Nehru. There is another famous poem of his which basically pits Gandhi versus Chandrasekhar Azad, and he says, oh, what did Gandhi do? And so Gandhi gets to be on the currency notes, but what does Chandrasekhar Azad get? He gets nothing, right? So in your head, he's trying to create enemies when there are none, because it's not an exclusive space. It's not saying, oh, only Gandhi did everything and Chandrasekhar Azad did none. But the poetry makes you believe that is the argument, and that is the binary you must choose from. And then so his poetry is also very interesting, because they look at different aspects, not just historical but also contemporary. He will attack enemies and critics of the Modi government. He will attack the communists. He will attack students in JNU. He will attack politicians. So the poetry lends itself to being weaponized towards different audiences and against different enemies.
Yeah, what was a big surprise for me, because I cover art. For decades I've been covering art. I've met many artists. This is the first time I've met artists who are catering to creating division. Most art is to bring people together, to elevate the human soul. So this came as a big surprise to me. Did it come as a surprise to you, art for the dark side?
Yes and no, in the sense that I think, going into the book as well, I knew what popular culture can do. See, the reason why popular culture becomes such a convenient form and such an easy form to tap into is because it is universally accepted. As I said, you don't have to go into a political meeting and listen to an old fact telling you what to do, right? You don't have to engage with that at all. You can be entertained, and yet you can be radicalized, and that is what is so powerful about popular culture. It's extremely insidious. So I knew that I was getting into this, but what I was surprised was with the scale at which it's growing in India. I didn't, because I didn't see this, and I'm a part of I'm an independent journalist, so I report a lot for mainstream media outlets, and we've not really looked at this at all. So I was surprised at just how popular these guys are, and I'll give you an example of the popularity, because I think we sometimes in our echo chambers sit and we don't realize the world that is out there, because we don't engage with that world. And with Kavi Singh, the singer, I remember this was March 21, and the Kumbh Mela was happening in Haridwar. And I was traveling with her, and I was at the location, and we were by the banks of the Ganga. And she's just sort of doing her stuff, and we were waiting for the Ganga Aarti. When a guy from Maharashtra walks in, and he recognizes her. So he says, "Oh, you're Kavi Singh," and she says, "Yes." He says, "Oh, I love your music. I absolutely worship and adore what you're doing." And she says, "Thank you so much." And that is common. It's not uncommon at all. But what he says next, Shevlin, is what is uncommon. He says, "We're by the banks of the Ganga. Can I wash your feet with the water of the Ganga?" So I was stunned at that point. And that's when I realized that, see, these guys are not just celebrities in the traditional form of celebrityhood, which is that people love to take selfies and be seen with them and stuff. They're celebrities with an added degree of legitimacy and credibility because they're seen to be doing things that no one else is doing. They're seen to be speaking truth to power in their world. They're seen to be saying things which make them unpopular in their conceptualization. And they're not doing this for any tangible reward. Right? So they're saying, oh, these are not, they're not getting a Rajya Sabha seat from the BJP, they're not getting anything. But why are they doing it? They're doing it because they care about Hindus. So this sort of, attachment gives them a higher degree of credibility than any other pop star can possibly get.
No, but they are getting tangible rewards in the sense of YouTube. If you get so many million views and right like that, they would get some money, right?
They get a lot of money. So YouTube, in fact, facilitates, and I would go a step forward and say that YouTube actively funds so much of this content because YouTube at that point, stops moderating. Most of these people have YouTube channels with millions of subscribers, which effectively means that they get thousands of dollars every month sometimes from YouTube, and that is the money that they then end up investing in their own art form. So they make better videos. They make they sort of record songs in a better studio and so on and so forth, and then they put in more money to advertise themselves. So YouTube is actively helping them grow their audience so much more. But the audience doesn't really know all of this. The audience thinks they are just internet creators who are speaking the truth, and which is why they must be respected and worshipped.
Okay. How did you feel while going through this thing? I mean, did you feel depressed, sometimes hopeless, or what is your reaction?
I mean, I did. To be honest, it becomes a very intense sort of space to report on because it's, as journalists, we're not used to holding on to a story for 4 years. As I said, we're used to the hit and run kind of reporting where we get in, where we spend maybe a couple of days, maybe a week or 10 days or so, and then we move on. But with this book, I had to live with the subject and also my subjects for 4 years, right? So what would typically happen is I would spend time with them. I would travel with them. I would go to their family homes. I would try and see where they grew up. I would try and talk to people. So there's a lot that I was consuming, along with consuming their work as well, because that was very, very important for me to understand. But here's the thing, and I say this in all humility. I realize that it's not my emotion that matters at that point, right? It's not my political leaning that matters. Because people are not gathered to hear what I feel or what I felt during the reporting. People have gathered not because of Kunal Purohit. People have gathered because they care about the subject and they want to know more about the subject. So as a journalist, I remembered that it's I am not the story at all. The story is out there to be told, and I must do everything I can to be invested in that space to be able to tell those stories, because I am not important, the story is.
Great. How long did it take to write the book?
I started working on it in 2019 and I published it in November 23.
So no, but how long did you take the actual just the manuscript?
I used to keep writing, so every reporting trip that I would do, I would come back and I would write a bit. Because I
so
didn't want to report
taking a longer time. Nah?
It took a long time, but also this kind of reporting takes its time, because these people are also not people who would open up immediately. They would need some time for them to trust you, for them to get to know you, for them to get to know your politics, and yet be comfortable knowing that I don't share their politics. So that took its own time.
Okay. Did you get a grant or fellowship?
I didn't know. I spent.
Okay, so
I
you're
spent
spending
most of
from
it
your.
for my.
Okay.
I mean, my publisher will be very unhappy when I say this, but I got a very measly advance, which I spent very promptly on the reporting, and that is what the book was also meant for. So that's
yeah. Okay. Great. So this is a political question.
I mean, the book is political.
Yeah. So what do you think is going to happen to India now that Hindutva has captured the public imagination?
It's a very broad question. I don't know how to answer, but I can tell you this. Till say maybe 10 years ago, maybe slightly longer, there were conversations that one would have within a closed group of people, As I said, my cousin would feel like he could tell me that Muslims were bursting firecrackers after Pakistan won and so on and so forth. What has happened now is all of those conversations are out in the public, and no one now feels anything before vocalizing those thoughts publicly, right? In fact, you feel emboldened because you feel like this is the time. So hate is now the mainstream. Hate is not the fringe. Hate is not on the sidelines. Hate is now the mainstream. So all of the popular culture, what it effectively makes you believe is when you listen to a song which calls for for the Muslim population to be controlled, you say, hang on, if you're someone who's had all of these biases in your mind, you say, hang on, I used to feel that secretly, that I feel like Muslims are growing. But if there's a song about it, surely that's true, right? So it makes you feel less lonely if you have all of those biases. And it makes you feel like this is a larger narrative that I want to be a part of. The second thing it's done is that, communalism used to be a very different affair till a few years ago, which was that, communalism used to be these big events, these big riots that used to happen. There used to be violence, tensions would be stoked. It would sometimes take weeks, sometimes take months to gain a semblance of normalcy. What has now happened is communalism in this form is, I call, an everyday form of communalism. It's bite-sized communalism. You don't need a riot anymore. You don't need a lynching anymore, because when you're listening to these songs, when you're listening to these poems, when you're reading these books, you're consuming the same rhetoric, but in a way that it doesn't become an event at all.
It's the poisoning of the human mind without them realizing
without them realizing, and as I said, while entertaining them. Right, so they're being entertained, and I go to UP, I go to Jharkhand. People are listening to these songs when they're driving. People are listening to them on their phones as caller tunes, as ringtones. When I was in Jharkhand, when I first discovered that hate crime I told you about, my driver was someone who was with the Bajrang Dal, and his song, his caller tune, was a song saying, was it? I think it was called something to the lines that there will be saffron everywhere, right? Har ghar Bhagwa. I remember now. It used to be called Har ghar Bhagwa chayega, Ram Raj fir aayega. Ek hi nara, ek hi naam, Jai Shri Ram, Jai Shri Ram. So basically saying that this is the only identity there is, and everyone should be saying this. Everyone should be saying Jai Shri Ram. So now, for him, it's his caller tune, but I used to wake up every morning calling him up and listening to it as the first song in my day. And so that is what it does. It makes it acceptable in these bite-sized formats. And I think that is what is so dangerous about this form of popular culture.
Do you think, after a period of time, this type of music will wane away?
I mean, are you being optimistic when you ask me that? Is that...
I don't know. I'm just guessing what would happen.
Look, Shevlin, I think this music is a product of this particular time and place, right? The time and the place that India finds itself in, where this is, and the reason why this music even exists is because there are millions of people out there who are listening to this kind of song, or listening to this kind of poetry and reading these kinds of books. Kavi Singh, for instance, the singer I tell you about, her first song I told you was on Pulwama. But her next few songs were on topics which had nothing to do with Hindu right-wing politics. There was a song that she made on voter awareness. There was a song that she made on how, India has a glorious history, and so on and so forth. So there are songs that she did, but none of those songs actually managed to reach the heights of popularity that Pulwama did. So when she was sitting there, she's wondering what just happened, because for her, she had put in a lot more effort and thought into the next few songs and not in Pulwama. Pulwama was an overnight decision. So, my point in telling you this was that there is a very real audience for this. And the audience will exist as long as the ideology remains as dominant as it does. When the ideology stops being as dominant is when there will be less and less people who will hopefully subscribe to it.
Would you comment on the acceptance of this kind of songs in Punjab?
In Punjab, in my reporting, what I would do is I would also look at the YouTube data, because otherwise it's very difficult to tell what kind of music works where. Punjab actually was not in any of the most popular spots where this kind of music was consumed. It also tells you that Punjabi music inherently is also a very popular form of entertainment in that region. Most of this stuff that I talk about is all in Hindi, and that limits its scope sometimes. So it's not been as effective in being limited in Karnataka, but in Punjab they've not managed to actually make the breakthrough. But the interesting part here is, this is UP 2021, just before the UP elections when Yogi Adityanath won. I came across, and I was following the elections from Mumbai, Shevlin, and I had never heard of this song. But when I go to UP, just in the days before the election, I hear a song which is everywhere, and the song says, "जो राम को लाए हैं, हम उनको लाएंगे, UP में फिर से हम भगवा लहराएंगे," right? Which essentially means the guys who got Ram back, we will vote them back in, and we will unfurl the saffron in Uttar Pradesh. Now that song was everywhere. To answer your question, that song was created by someone who has roots in Punjab. He sings mostly in Hindi, but he's a popular figure in Punjab. So that guy was a devotional singer from Punjab, and he created this very, very political song in the run up to the elections, and he got mad viral. Then he was called onto the BJP's election campaign rallies and so on and so forth. So I don't rule out that happening, where artists maybe start realizing that this is financially rewarding, this is extremely lucrative in so many different ways, and they might start doing it. But I don't see it essentially as something that is very popular in Punjab at this point, at least.
Yeah, sir. Yeah. So you are talking about my place. I come from Muzaffarnagar, so I see it live what you are talking now. So I just have one question. I don't know how would you respond to it, but if we can call them artists, even as per se, do they have peace in their life from propagating this much hate? Because see, Kerala, I've seen people have patience. I mean, I can make my kid grow here. I feel so comfortable. I moved here, my husband is a Malayali. I can't see that patience, that love. So if they're artists at all, in their personal life, do they have that peace? Can they sleep at night?
I mean, it's an interesting question. I'll try my best to answer it. I think this sense of what is good, what is bad is a very deeply subjective one, right? So for you and me, or for a lot of people, what they're doing is not fitting in the definition of being good, but for them it is. For them, they're convinced that this is, as I said, one of the characters in my book, he calls it a cultural war. So he's convinced that this is a cultural war he's fighting. So for him, he's actually at peace knowing that he's doing something to change it. He likes the fact that he's doing something. He's happy, and he's pretty satisfied that he's at least not sitting on the sidelines and complaining. He's saying, I'm trying to do something. So they are at peace, yes. I mean, and like it or not, they are artists in their own likes, in their own worlds, because they are creating a form of art, even if the art is weaponized to a different effect.
Yeah, just 1 second. I want to add. Can just give you a Malayali connection.
Definitely not relevant to the book, but I mean, sure. My wife's mother, so my mother-in-law is a Malayali, so she is from Kottayam. Chechi stays there, so if Chechi is listening, I say hi to her. but that's the connection.
Pardon me, I had to write this down. Do you think this hatred you mentioned existed for long, and the number just increased as the population increased? If so, the people who think positively or rationally must have increased also.
Are you into mathematics? Because it seems like it's a very logical sort of.
I want to add more.
Okay.
It must have increased. Means seeing the number of people assembled here, I feel hopeful. Am I just being a hopeless optimistic? What's your comment?
I have no idea what their political affiliations are. So
they are listening to you. they're listening to you.
I mean, they might have thought this is a book that extols the virtues of Hindutva pop, you know, so they've
then
come to the wrong place.
Then they won't have been here for long.
So listen, I think hate has always existed, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen that in my family, I've seen that in people around me, and this is, you know, 30, 40 years ago, where this was always in whispers, right? Because I think especially the Hindu-Muslim equation is one fraught with a lot of violence, a lot of baggage that we've carried for not just decades, but centuries even, right? And you know, when you go back in history, you find examples of that. So that baggage has always been there, and hence, so has there been the prejudice and the bias. What they've done is very effectively tapped into it, right? They've seen that this exists and that you can weaponize it to their liking. I don't know if that's going to go down anytime soon, because one thing that I did realize when I was writing my book, and I want to say this, you know, and I say this at as many places as I can, is to not conflate this with the political project. Right? This is not just about the BJP winning, you know, or sort of the BJP remaining in power, because the people who are the creators believe in a larger cultural shift that they want. It doesn't necessarily have to end or begin with the BJP's victories. So it's not necessarily anything to do with the political project as such, and which is why I say that I don't know if it's going to go down. Just with the BJP's electoral fortunes one way or the other.
Hello, sir. Thank you for the talk. It was really interesting. I'm really looking forward to getting your book. I'm from Varanasi, Uttar Pradesh. So I've also been quite at the forefront of seeing this, as we would call the H-pop rise. But I also want to comment upon an existing culture of poetry which has existed in the north of India ever since maybe the Bhakti movement, if we go back to it, be it Raidas, be it Kabir Das, and all of those poets had this this culture of what we would call the Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb, as it was called, or rationalism or anti-caste approach to it. So would there be some hope in countering this music with another sort of music? Like, I recently attended the Mahindra Kabira festival, which happened in Varanasi, where a lot of poetry of Kabir was sung as songs. So, could there be a scope of countering music with music?
No, 100%. I mean, this is a great point, in fact, and you've in some ways answered the question yourself. See, what has happened, in my view, is that there are narratives that the liberal order actually failed to hang on to. Right, and as an example, look at what has happened to Gandhi. The fact that the subject of my book, one of the subjects of my book, Kamalagne, the poet, and you mentioned poetry, the fact that he's made poetry around recasting Gandhi's legacy is because they've been very smart at realizing that there is a vacuum, right? Not many people on the other side are actually talking about Gandhi. We don't see too many attempts to make Gandhi's life and his lessons relevant at this point for a younger audience. We don't see those efforts, but what we do see is from the right wing, we see efforts to sort of tarnish the legacy. We see efforts to sort of call him names. They call him sort of a Pakistani stooge, someone who was a Muslim agent, and so on and so forth. But the question is, how did that even come to be? That came to be because there was a vacuum in our understanding, in our popular imagination of what Gandhi was, what his work is. I can go on and on with examples of the number of narratives that we've failed to hang on to. And those are the narratives that they've also captured and weaponized in some ways. So I firmly believe that one part of the response has to be to reinforce and reiterate the narratives and the values that the other side believes in. That is one way of saying, okay, this is what we believe in. There's no point only criticizing them, because popular culture is such a thing that, as I said, people take to it without realizing what they're getting into, and then when they take to it, they enjoy it immensely. So the way to counter it also has to be something that is popular. It can't be research papers, it can't be academic conferences. It has to be in the realm of culture and popular culture.
Yeah, so a reader is always changed by the books that they read. So what about the writer? As a writer, were you changed by the time you had finished writing? And also, what about the people that you went around with, like Kavi Singh? Was she affected in any way by your presence in her life? Did she try to change you as a person? Or were they like this some guy who's tagging along? Thanks.
So that's a great question. I mean, I think one of the things that I did realize, and it's not a popular thing to say, among sort of liberal audiences sometimes, is that there is a deeper need to understand, why our society's discourse is changing, right? And I say this in the book as well. There is a deeper need to understand the point of radicalization of so many people within us, so many people around us. What are the factors that are driving them to accept, or to take sort of extremist positions, to wish for the deaths or the extermination of fellow citizens and so on? I think there's a deeper need to also introspect and see where the liberal side has actually stopped being liberal. One of the things that I hear of when I travel among the Hindu right wing is their sort of position about how, and this is before 2014, right? When they would want to have conversations around Hinduism, around sometimes their concerns about Muslims, about Christians, and so on and so forth, without giving them any space at all, they would find themselves to be shunned by liberals completely. So they've carried a lot of rage and anger, saying we were never given the platforms to speak about what we believed was right. And as a result, now they see that the criticism of liberals doesn't count too much, because they say you're not really liberal if you didn't allow us to speak at that point. So what I have realized is I think I've learned to be a lot more empathetic towards their personal journeys, right? Not their political positions, but their personal journeys, yes, to understand why they arrived at the strategies, at the political ideologies that they have. I think there's a deeper need to understand their personal journeys there. And I try and do that in my work, yes.
So I have one of the obvious questions. What was and what is the caste composition of these singers? And what in your travel, how do you see the Hindutva pop in terms of its impact on the caste? Like, is it a unifying force or it is a extremely dividing force for caste, not in terms of religion?
That's interesting. I mean, so, one of the things that would happen when I would travel with them and over 4 years, I would try and obviously have conversations on caste and how they see caste. And they would have the same refrain. They say, we don't believe in caste. So, you don't ask my caste. I don't want to tell you my caste because I don't believe in it. For me, we're all Hindus and we're all equals. And that also tells you a lot about how the Hindu right wing has, constantly tried to position their sort of stance on caste. That we don't want to be talking about caste, we don't want to get into nitty-gritties of caste, because the idea is to appeal to all of you as Hindus. What Hindutva popular culture effectively does is that, right? It tells you that Hindus, all of us, all of them who believe in being Hindus, no matter what caste, we're all facing danger from number of sources, a number of enemies. So should we fight amongst ourselves, or should we just fight against them? Because these are all existential issues that we're fighting, and that is what they sort of try and constantly reiterate. So Hindutva pop in some ways does actually manage to break through some of these caste barriers, and so has the Hindu right wing in many ways. And my reporting experiences also tell me, where I've gone to Dalit bastis, I've gone to places which have never typically been a part of the Hindutva project, but they today are. They see the merits of the rhetoric that the Hindu right wing says, saying, oh, we're all equals. We don't care what your caste is. So the Hindutva pop culture project does seep into that and play into it, yes.
So my question is, when like you said, we all have family and friends and people among us who have these beliefs that their lives are being threatened, or we're in a situation where they need a certain kind of political narrative to help them. And how do we sort of engage in these discussions in a way that can help them question or challenge the sort of propagandic narratives that are being pushed forth?
I mean, it's difficult because I think we're all in spaces where people around us have now sort of shown us different colors, and sometimes take extremist positions, and one doesn't know what to do. People are leaving family groups, and friends WhatsApp groups are breaking up, and so on and so forth. So these are very difficult conversations to have. I don't have a simple answer to just what you should be saying, but I firmly believe that the engagement must be on, right? I think one of the problems is that the engagement has broken. I think we're refusing to engage with people whose political ideologies we don't seem to be able to sort of understand or sympathize with. And I think that is problematic, because one of the reasons why we've not known of Hindutva pop culture all of these years, and it's existed for a few years, is that our media doesn't engage beyond a point. Right, so journalists like me don't have the resources to go out to actually engage with these pop stars, with this world, and that is what has led us to fighting in the air. When you don't know what is popularizing Hindutva, there is no chance that you can actually be able to counter it.
Great.
So awareness is the first form of countering it, is what I believe.
Okay, thank you, Kunal. It was superb. We all enjoyed. Please give a round of applause too. And please buy the book. It's a superb book. It's available in the stalls over there.